They always say the Appalachian Trail can either heal you or haunt you. I went in expecting the former. I got the latter. What happened to me during a solo trek through a lesser-known section of the trail in North Carolina still makes my skin crawl, years later. I wasn't a first-time hiker, nor was I unfamiliar with the woods. But nothing I had ever experienced prepared me for the nightmare that unfolded that night. It was late September. The leaves had just begun their fiery transformation, painting the trail in reds, oranges, and yellows. The air had that crisp, early autumn bite to it, cool enough to need a jacket but not so cold it was uncomfortable. I had planned this solo hike to clear my head after a rough breakup. Some people get drunk or binge-watch TV. I hike. I started around 10 a.m. with a lightweight pack, plenty of food, and a GPS tracker synced to my phone. The section I picked was off the main corridor, a side loop with a good reputation among hikers for being scenic and lightly trafficked. Exactly what I wanted. By 5 p.m., I was about 8 miles in and looking for a decent spot to set up camp. That's when I saw the switchbacks ahead. They were steep, a zigzagging path carved into a hillside thick with laurel and underbrush. The kind of trail that slows you down and tires you out. I figured I'd climb to the top, find a flat spot, and settle in. As I began the ascent, the woods around me grew quieter. Not unusual as evening sets in, but the silence felt heavier. Halfway up the second switchback, I heard it, a soft, almost cheerful whistle. 3 notes. Repeated twice. I stopped and turned, expecting to see another hiker coming up behind me. No one. I waited a moment, thinking maybe the sound was carried by the wind. But the forest was still. Unnaturally still. Shrugging it off, I continued upward. Another switchback. More rustling leaves underfoot. Then, again, whistle. 3 notes. This time, closer and unmistakably human. I called out, "Hello? Someone there?" No response. Just silence. I picked up my pace. By the 5th switchback, the whistle had changed. It was slower. Drawn out. Less cheerful. More deliberate. The kind of sound you hear in horror movies before something terrible happens. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I told myself it was probably a prank, or another hiker trying to mess with me. But the trail was remote. I hadn't seen a single soul all day. At the 7th switchback, I did something I regret. I stopped, turned off my flashlight, and crouched low behind a thick tree. I wanted to see who was following me. I waited. Minutes passed. No sound. No movement. Then I heard it again, the whistle, now right below me on the trail. 3 notes. Slow. Raspy. Like someone exhaling through cracked lips. I leaned out just enough to glimpse the switchback below. That's when I saw it. A silhouette. Tall. Unnaturally thin. No backpack. No gear. Just standing there in the fading twilight, head tilted slightly upward, as if smelling the air. It didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood and stared up the trail. Toward me. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. My muscles cramped. My breath shallow. Eventually, darkness swallowed the figure. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't set up camp. I bushwhacked off the trail, cutting through dense woods by flashlight until I found a rocky outcrop and huddled there until sunrise. The next morning, I found the trail again and hiked back out the way I came. The switchbacks were silent. Empty. But at the base, carved crudely into a tree trunk, were 3 symbols. Musical notes. I reported the experience to a ranger. He didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He just nodded slowly and said, "You're not the first." I don't know what I saw. I don't know who or what was whistling. But I do know this, I never hike alone anymore. And I never, ever ignore the sound of whistling in the woods. Some places don't exist until you've already left them. That's the only way I can explain what happened to my cousin Mark and me on a snow trekking trip near Banff, Canada. We were prepared. We were cautious. We were experienced. But nothing prepared us for what we stumbled into that winter, or how hard it would be to prove it ever happened at all. We'd both taken a week off from work, Mark from his IT job in Vancouver, me from a teaching gig in Calgary. We decided to spend it doing what we loved, backcountry hiking through the snow-blanketed trails near Banff National Park. Not the tourist-heavy routes. We wanted silence, solitude, and maybe a bit of discomfort. That's where the reward usually is. Mark had a route planned. It was a 3-day circuit, covering about 22 kilometers round trip, with stops at remote-use cabins that required backcountry permits. These cabins were originally built for rangers decades ago, and now they're rentable to hikers in the off-season. Cabin Marker 17 was listed as the first stop. The day started beautifully. We were dropped off by a ranger on snowmobile, just before noon, at the trailhead. He made a quick joke about how Cabin 17's always a little colder than it should be, then handed us the radio and GPS beacon, and told us he'd check in on the third day. Nothing ominous in his tone. Just mountain weather humor. The trail was peaceful. Pine trees dusted with snow, the crunch of our boots and sled behind us, blue sky above. For hours, it was just nature and our conversation. Around 4 p.m., the shadows got longer, and we hit the first marker, a wooden sign nailed into a birch tree with a faded 17 burned into it. We followed the spur trail another 800 meters until we saw the cabin. It looked just like the pictures from the reservation site, A-frame, wood exterior, metal chimney, a single front door with a small window. There was a firewood bin outside and even a shovel leaning next to the steps. We unpacked quickly, got the fire started, and had a simple meal by headlamp light. By 9 p.m., we were both in our sleeping bags, the fire crackling low. That's when things started to feel wrong. I was drifting in and out of sleep when I heard crunching outside. Snow. Heavy, deliberate steps. I sat up instantly. Mark heard it too, his eyes were already open, fixed on the window. We both stayed silent, listening. One step, pause. Then another. Something was walking a slow circle around the cabin. I reached for my flashlight and quietly moved to the door. We hadn't locked it. I pressed my ear against it, heart hammering. Whatever was out there wasn't trying to hide. It wanted us to hear it. Mark whispered, "Animal?" I shook my head. Too heavy. After a few minutes, the footsteps stopped. I opened the door and swept the light outside. Nothing. Not even footprints. The snow was untouched. That didn't make sense. We chalked it up to nerves. Maybe the fire popping, or snow falling off a branch. Anything. We went back to sleep, uneasily. The next morning, we had breakfast, packed up, and followed our map toward the next marker. The cabin, cold and ordinary in the daylight, didn't seem threatening anymore. We joked about last night and blamed our overactive imaginations. 4 hours into the hike, we passed a collapsed structure. An old cabin, clearly abandoned. Its roof sagged, the wood rotting, half covered in snow and vines. A rusted plaque near the entrance caught my eye. Faded numbers. Mark brushed away the snow. 17. We stood there, speechless. "No way," I said. "That's impossible. We stayed in 17 last night." He looked at me. "Then what the hell was that?" We pulled out the GPS. We were only 3 kilometers from the drop-off point. According to the map, cabin marker 17 was right here, this wreck, this pile of history. We flipped through our photos. Everyone we'd taken inside the cabin last night was gone. Just black squares where they should have been. We hiked in silence for a long time. We reached the second night's marker and found another cabin, this one well kept, on the map, and exactly where it should have been. It had a logbook. We wrote about our experience. We needed someone to read it. When the ranger picked us up on the third day, he seemed surprised we were already waiting. We told him everything. He listened carefully, then gave a tight-lipped smile. You stayed in 17, huh? Yeah. Why? He pointed back at the forest. That cabin burned down in 86. Lightning strike. Took out the whole structure. No one's rebuilt it since. You're not the first to say you spent the night there. He left it at that. We tried to find records. Newspaper archives, trail reports. Nothing about a rebuilt cabin. Nothing about other hikers reporting the same thing. We went back the following winter. Same trail. Same marker. But no spur trail. No cabin. Just snow, trees, and silence. Some places don't exist until you're already gone. And sometimes, they're still waiting for you to come back. I'd hiked the trail a dozen times before, always alone, always at night. It was my version of therapy, a 6-mile loop carved through dense pines just outside a small town in Oregon. No traffic noise. No people. Just the rhythmic crunch of boots against dirt and the distant call of owls. It grounded me. The trail started as a gradual climb, winding up a slope until the first mile marker. From there, it flattened out into a soft, silent corridor between towering trees, barely wide enough for two people to walk shoulder to shoulder. The canopy overhead was so thick it made even moonlit nights feel cloaked in shadow. That's what I loved about it. The darkness. The solitude. The way it wrapped around you like a familiar coat. But on one particular night, I learned that solitude isn't always a comfort. It was late October. A storm had passed through earlier in the day, leaving the path damp and slick. The forest smelled of wet leaves and moss. I started my hike around 10 p.m., armed with a high-powered headlamp, water, a backup flashlight, and my usual sense of invincibility. It had rained, but I wasn't worried. I knew the trail. I could walk it with my eyes closed. The first mile went as usual. A bit of fog clung to the ground, swirling at ankle level. My boots left dark prints in the soft soil. I passed the first marker, then the second. My breathing was steady. The air was cool. Every now and then, a branch creaked overhead, but nothing out of the ordinary. Just the forest talking. At mile 3, I noticed something strange. No animal sounds. No crickets, no owls, nothing. Just the sound of my own movement and the occasional drop of water falling from leaves. I paused, clicked off my headlamp, and stood still, listening silence. Then I heard it, soft, deliberate steps. Not behind me. Ahead. Coming from somewhere beyond the next bend. I froze. My light was still off. Whoever or whatever it was hadn't seen me yet. My mind raced. It could be another hiker. A night hunter. A ranger. Or something else. The steps stopped. I waited. My hand tightened around the flashlight. When I finally dared to turn the light back on, the trail ahead was empty. But I saw it then. At the edge of the beam, half shielded by trees, were two pinpricks of red light eyes. They didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared. I took a cautious step forward, trying to convince myself they were animal eyes, deer maybe, reflecting red in the light. But they were too far apart. Too level. And too still. Hey! I called out. Who's there? No response. I raised the flashlight higher, illuminating the trunks on either side of the trail. The eyes vanished. Not blinked out, just gone, as if they'd never been there. I should have turned back then. I knew it, even as I kept walking. But curiosity, pride, maybe pushed me forward. I needed to know what I'd seen. At mile 4, things got worse. The fog thickened until I could barely see a few feet ahead. The beam of my headlamp seemed to be swallowed by it. I slowed my pace, stepping carefully. My ears strained for any sound, twigs breaking, leaves rustling, but it was as if the forest had stopped existing beyond that veil of mist. Then I heard it again breathing. Not my own. Heavy, labored, raspy breathing. Off to my right, just beyond the trail. I stopped dead. The breathing stopped too. I turned the flashlight in that direction. Nothing but trees and fog. Then I saw movement. A dark shape slipping between trunks. Tall. Upright. Almost human, but wrong somehow. The proportions didn't make sense. The arms were too long. The gait too smooth. I backed away slowly. My heart pounded. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied. The shape was gone. I ran. Mile 5 was a blur of panic. Branches slapped my face. My boots slipped on the wet ground. I didn't care. I just needed to reach the end. To get back to my car, to the road, to anywhere but there. Then I reached mile marker 6. Only, it wasn't there. Where there should have been a wooden post with a reflective 6 nailed into it, there was nothing. Just more trail winding deeper into the trees. I stopped. Turned in a full circle. Had I missed it? No. I knew this trail. Knew every turn, every root that jutted from the ground. I hadn't passed the marker. It was gone. That's when I saw the red eyes again. Closer this time. At the edge of the trail. Watching. I stepped back. They moved with me. Always keeping the same distance. I turned and ran again, the flashlight bouncing wildly in my grip. And then, suddenly, I was back at the parking lot. Just like that. No transition. 1 second I was on the trail, being stalked by some impossible thing, and the next I was standing next to my car, panting, soaked in sweat. The sun was just beginning to rise. I looked back. The trailhead was there, just as it always was. Quiet. Peaceful. As if none of it had happened. But I know what I saw. I've never gone back. I tried to find information online, missing hikers, strange sightings, but found nothing concrete. Just a few vague stories, whispers in local forums about red lights in the woods. Some people said it was a trick of the light. Others mentioned an old legend about a forest guardian that punishes those who walk alone at night. I don't care what it was. I just know it's still out there. And it's still watching.